Hey guys, what's up? We're back with some more reactions after dark. We are, of course, going to be watching The Internet's Darkest Corners 6 by Nick Crowley. Though, of course, we left off, we had watched, was The Disturbing Things I Found on the Internet, Volume 14, I think, by Masquerade, which has some stuff in it. And by stuff is, I'm just saying stuff because I've already forgotten what stuff it was. Like, genuinely. I've already forgotten. That's just what you have to put up with me. I'm just gonna forget everything as soon as I watch it, because I literally watched it yesterday, so I just don't remember.
Fifth alarm. Working structure
Yeah,
fire.
flashing images, of course, as usual. Following video contains scenes that may be upsetting and distressing for some. Viewer discretion is advised, so we don't have the standard list of things that are in this episode, so I'm guessing we're not going to see any of that stuff, just like last time.
41 Liberty Road Drive.
It's 9 a.m. on May 18th, 2024. Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina wake up to the smell and sight of black smoke billowing up into the sky.
Which we're going to assume is bad. Black smoke means bad? Question mark. I think there's different colors of smoke, and depending on the color, it depends on how bad it is.
The source: a massive 7-story apartment complex, home to 239 luxury units, or at least what should have been luxury units. At the time, the structure was still under construction, meaning that thankfully no residents were living there. But this in and of itself presented two major problems. The first was that, in its current state, the top 5 floors were primarily just the bones of the structure, made almost entirely of wood and insulation, making the building as a whole extremely flammable.
Oh, what is this called? The Monty Shell livestream?
Meaning that, although the fire had started out relatively small, it was quickly going to consume the entire complex if it wasn't put out quickly. Which brings us to the second and even more glaring problem. The building
15 construction workers were actively working at the site.
was actively under construction when the fire started, and that morning 17 construction workers had clocked in, all of whom were now in grave danger. And by the time the firefighters arrived on the scene, the situation was already dire. And so firefighters rushed in, finding a large group of the employees and leading them out to safety. Though when they made it outside, they made the horrifying realization that they had only found 15 of them.
Okay, so we're still missing 2 guys.
Somewhere within that labyrinth of burning wooden walls, 2 men were left behind, trapped and calling out to anyone who might hear them. And these pleas weren't just being made to those on the scene, as in the following minutes, one of the trapped men, 30-year-old DeMonte Sherrill, would take out his phone, open up Facebook, and go live, revealing the horrifying reality that both he and his friend had found themselves in.
Somebody send help, we're in South Park. Help!
Today, we're going to be showing our friends the basic
Oh, and that's rolling into the intro.
come along.
You gotta do it now. Now or never.
I'm guessing things didn't go too well here, unfortunately. There's still a lot of this story left to go, but we are watching a Nick Crowley video, so you can only assume that things are going to go bad. And there's not going to be a happy ending to this. Yeah, again, the DeMonte Show live stream. Oh, he was live streaming too. I just really put that together. Like, I thought he was just recording a video. No, he's like live streaming, trying to get people help.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now, at work, in a building on fire, and I can't get out.
The stream showed DeMonte Sherrill and his friend Reuben Holmes somewhere deep within the prospective apartment complex, and though the fire hadn't yet reached them, the smoke certainly had, blanketing them in a thick impenetrable fog, not only making breathing extremely difficult, but also making it nearly impossible for rescuers to see them.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us. We're gonna have to stand out here and see.
How much of this live stream he's going to actually play in this video?
The building on fire, I'm trapped inside, me and my man.
This was likely one of the reasons why DeMonte chose to start this livestream, hopeful that it could show rescuers exactly where they were. But based on the footage, their positioning was far from ideal. They were on the second highest floor, floor 6, which had only one access point, a single stairway that was on the complete opposite side of the building. And based on their testimony in the footage, something had clearly blocked their path to that one remaining exit, meaning that the only other way out would be to jump. Though at 6 stories in the air, and falling into what would likely be the heart of the fire, this would have meant certain death. There was quite literally nowhere for them to go. Rescue was their only hope.
Is that like a wide open area there? I mean, at least there's that, but... Yeah, I can't tell if that... It's just so smoky that it might not actually be a wide open area. That might just be an enclosed area, but it's so smoky. It looks like it's going outside, but it's not going outside.
Yo, this building is on fire. I'm at work. Somebody send help. We're in South Park.
Seemingly realizing this, DeMonte began to grow more desperate, yelling out into the void of smoke, while Ruben can be seen in the background waving his phone flashlight, with both men doing anything they could to help rescuers find them. Before
what? They start falling apart?
the stream abruptly ends.
Well, nothing really happened on the stream, so it felt like it was just... Maybe the phone ran out of battery or something, or maybe even wherever he was live streaming it to cut him off because it was like a dire situation and they weren't going to take the chance of seeing these two guys die live, so whatever platform this was, cut their losses and just like shut the stream down so they wouldn't get in trouble, at the expense of possibly costing these two their lives.
Rescuers were aware of the unfolding situation on the 6th story. They first tried to reach the men by using a massive crane with a basket attached, which can actually be seen in DeMonte's livestream. Though in it, you can see that it's
Okay, so they can see outside, so there is some ventilation.
also facing the complete wrong direction, as the smoke was just that impenetrable. However, at one point, it's believed that the crane operator did actually see these men, but the blaze was just too extreme, leading to the operator himself having to be rescued. This left only one real option for saving DeMonte and Ruben. They were going to have to go in after them. And so they climbed that stairway up to floor 6 and started their trek to the opposite end of the structure.
So it was blocks, right? So what are they going to do about that?
Before they could even make it halfway, the rescuers were relegated to a slow crawl, as the inferno around them raged more and more intensely, and the smoke grew thicker and thicker. Though that's when they began to hear screaming. Somewhere lost in that maze, Ruben and DeMonte were yelling as loud as they could for help. This sound was a sign that they were getting close. Though just then, rescuers would be met with another sound.
All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure, per command. All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure.
Command all companies, this will be defensive at this time.
We'll be ready for this side to collapse.
Everybody get out of the collapse zone. Confirming you are coming out, but you're not out of the building.
With the order being
Okay, so they were told to get out, so they're just like letting them die.
made for all of them to evacuate, as by this point, the structure was engulfed in flames, and a collapse was imminent. The firefighters tried to call out.
Where is this? This is South Park Mall. We have a South Park Mall here. Don't tell me this is also where I live.
Up to the two.
So many of these videos are like in Texas.
In one last attempt to guide them towards rescue, but they never came. In fact, at that point, the structure fell eerily silent. They would leave that structure without DeMonte or Ruben, and minutes later,
So I don't know what this channel is, so it must just be another place that has a South Park Mall as well. I mean, it's not like that's a new, like some sort of like fancy name, like South Park and Mall, like 3 common words. So I'm just guessing that's just a standard place to have at a location.
later, the fire consumed the entire building, with the temperature inside reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Before
it collapsed.
it would eventually topple to the ground. And inside, DeMonte and Ruben would become the sole fatalities of this catastrophe.
Yo, I'm at South Park right now. At work, the The building on fire, and I can't get out. It's getting harder and harder for them to see us.
Knowing how the story ends would make this live stream difficult for anyone to watch, but what I find most upsetting about it is that the majority of those who initially watched this were his own friends and family that followed him on Facebook, with these viewers including his own mother.
Oh, so this was on Facebook.
And a lot of them probably had no idea he even worked this job, as he had just been hired that week. His brother had also caught the stream as it was happening and actually rushed over to the scene where he pleaded with the firefighters to watch the footage. But despite doing the best they could, there was just too much working against them to save DeMonte and Ruben. Following an investigation into the fire, it was discovered that the crew was using an organic foam insulation, which was known to be extremely flammable and produce thick black smoke. And this became deadly when the machine used to spray that insulation caught fire, sending the whole building up in flames, where they had yet to install any sort of smoke detector or alarm system to alert the crew of a fire.
Of course they didn't.
Making matters worse, there had been a temporary set of stairs made right where the two men had been trapped, but that stairwell had just been removed in order to make way for the permanent set of stairs. Because of this and a myriad of other issues, the companies involved with this construction were forced to pay a fine of $50,000 and are currently being sued by the families of both victims. But regardless of the outcome, nothing will ever make up for the loss of DeMonte Sherrill and Ruben Holmes.
Oh, they're just like stopping on that. Yeah, oof on that. So again, I don't know what they could have done. I guess, what was the time period of the building collapsing to the firefighters leaving? Because they got the call to leave, right? What amount of time was it before it collapsed after that point? Because could they have kept going up to try to save them at the risk of them all dying together? I don't know. Like, I don't know what you could do there, right? I mean, the firefighters tried. You could argue that they tried all they could do. That's just like, just combination of bad thing after bad thing after bad thing, just comboing together to cause that tragedy. The Johnny Cashman incident.
Things were getting concerning. Johnny Cashman spoke to his family nearly every single day.
Is your name actually Cashman? Is that actually your last name? Is that your family's entire last name, Cashman? Or is that just like a nickname? Like, is there people out there actually called Cashman? What?
But now, on the 6th day without receiving...
What's that dog? It looked like a hyena or something. Or a jackal. Like, I'm guessing it's just a regular dog. It's just this framing looked weird.
Any communication from him, they knew that something was wrong.
Yeah, they haven't heard from him in a while. I'm pretty sure that's the picture for the thumbnail, but he got a pretty good picture, because like what he's using for the thumbnail is like probably like way more high res than this, right?
Johnny lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, hundreds of miles away from his home in Maine, and so, being unable to check on him themselves, they called police in the area and requested a welfare check. Police entered Johnny's apartment on the 19th of April, 2022, and hours later, they would call his parents with the news that they had found their son dead on the floor.
Hey, well, you've already spoiled what's going to end up happening, and I guess we're going to find that out over like a span of like 10 plus minutes, like longer than that, 15 minutes. Of how we got to that point. John died from a medical event which caused a fatal GI bleed.
Johnny had experienced some sort of medical event that led to GI bleeding that ultimately claimed his life. But this made no sense to Johnny's family. He was only 38 years old and had just been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior. It was so out of the blue, in fact, that they even asked if there were any signs of a struggle, or if there was any evidence that he may have taken his own life. But they were assured that there was no trauma, no drugs, and nothing suspicious found on the scene, and that, as shocking as it was, his cause of death was entirely natural, and had likely just been spurred on by drinking and tobacco use, with the only solace being that Johnny didn't suffer, as they stated that he had died instantly. Because of this, no autopsy was performed, as the
instantly is... I don't know what GI means, so we're out of the loop on that. Let me just look that up. Okay, so that was kind of what I was thinking. It's gastrointestinal bleeding.
The
Like,
case seemed as straightforward as it gets.
would that be instantaneous? Just having something happen to them, like your digestive tract just exploding and then bleeding out, and then you just die immediately just from that? Like, really? Would it be really that instantaneous? I feel like the initial whatever happening would be painful, and then the bleeding out. Uh, what? It doesn't feel like that would be an instantaneous death.
And despite his family questioning if they should get their own autopsy, they were told by officers that it wouldn't be necessary. And so, Johnny's body was cremated and sent back to Maine, in what seemed to be the end of Johnny.
Okay, well, that was stupid. Why would you do that? These cops, I don't know why they're acting like this. I'm not going to assume they had something to do with it, but it's acting kind of weird. The family just immediately cremating the body instead of trying to figure out what really happened is also not good. Because now we've lost all that evidence.
Story.
April 29th, 2022. This is recent, 10 days later.
10 days after Johnny's body was discovered, his ex-girlfriend and her mother made their way back to his apartment in order to retrieve some of her belongings. She knew that re-entering the space was going to be difficult, but ultimately there was no way she could have prepared for what was waiting for her inside.
Toilet?
There was blood everywhere. It was pooled in the bathrooms, wiped on doors, spread all over the living space, and was even found on a chair and a banister.
Is this where he died? In his house? Right? And the police were like, yeah, it's all good. He just died internally. It's good. And his entire house was just covered in blood. What are they covering up? They didn't want them to, like, worry or freak out?
But the most horrifying part of it all was the walls. They were covered in splattered blood, which revealed long, streaking handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of death was deemed natural, what they found in that apartment seemed anything but.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he, again, did have this happen, started bleeding out from somewhere, and got the blood all over himself and on his hands, and as he was, like, in agony throughout his house, rubbing it all over the place, trying to, like, I guess, find anything to try to help. And then they're like, this could be, like, an act of mercy the cops were trying to do, be like, they don't want them to know how much he suffered, so like, oh yeah, it was just like an instantaneous natural death, like, it was fine, like, don't worry about it. But in reality, they knew that it was horrific, though I don't know if that's where the story is going to go. Like, that's wishful thinking.
Traumatized by what they were witnessing, the pair snapped multiple photos of the bloodshed.
Also, why didn't the cops tape this off as a, like, crime scene? Not a crime scene, but just like, do not enter. Get the yellow tape up. Because if you're trying to hide this from them, you did a bad job.
And ran out of the unit, directly into Johnny's neighbor. This neighbor revealed that they believed something far worse than a medical emergency had happened to Johnny, as they had a security camera mounted to their door which faced Johnny's unit, and on the day of his passing, it captured something incredibly disturbing.
Date of death? At 3 p.m. Wait, hold on. What is with this angle? Is this guy's apartment, like, behind the camera? Like, let's say Johnny's door is the door on the left here, and then the guy's apartment is in the back of this. So they're that close to each other, but technically, the wall here divides their house. Like, Johnny's house is this way, and then everything behind this is this guy's place.
The footage shows Johnny making his way up the flight of stairs,
He is wobbling side to side, though.
leading to his apartment at around 3:03 p.m.
That could just be fine, but he did go back left and right a lot.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, though it is noteworthy that he was holding an empty glass, perhaps insinuating that he had been drinking.
Yeah, because
but this doesn't seem to impair his movements much at all.
Much at all? I mean, he was doing a lot of wobbling left and right. Especially that's what the first thing I thought was like he's been drinking since he has something in his hand and he's swaying left and right.
As he punches in the code and enters his home, just as he did every other day. But moments later, something happens inside that unit, and while it goes unseen, it doesn't go
Yeah, I'm
unheard.
assuming not unheard. 1 minute after entry, only a minute.
Yo, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing, man? Stop. 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 Stop.
I didn't get much off of that other than them talking to someone and telling them to stop.
The audio seems to depict a man yelling, asking repeatedly, "What are you doing?" and begging for something to stop. On top of this, you can also hear loud thuds and banging, almost as if things were falling over inside, or there was some sort of physical altercation, before the unit then goes quiet just a few seconds later. It was unclear if this voice was Johnny's, or perhaps someone else who had been inside the unit, but regardless, one thing was apparent from this audio. There was someone else in that apartment.
I make that assumption, but I feel like it almost feels like there isn't. If we're gonna be spooky and say it's him talking to someone, but like there's no one actually there, so mental health issues, or the spooky part, maybe it is, I don't know, who knows, monster, demon, ghost, but I don't know, maybe it's another person, just the other person didn't say a single word. And it doesn't feel like a scuffle. It doesn't feel like two bodies interacting with each other. Like, it doesn't sound like that to me.
Despite the fact that Johnny lived alone. And just 7 minutes later, this unseen person
Did someone actually come out?
would emerge.
Okay, so someone actually came out, so never mind. Someone actually was in there. Are they gonna be covered in blood? Just nonchalantly. We got nothing
This
off of that.
clearly wasn't Johnny. And after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind.
Roll me back.
And after
Even further. I wanted to see the floor to see if he was leaving behind a trail, but he's not.
This clearly wasn't Johnny. And after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind.
What's in his hands? What is he doing? Why is he standing like that?
Turning around and walking back up the stairs before fiddling with the door handle, touching it only with his sleeve, like he was wiping off his fingerprints.
Oh, he forgot to do that, that's what. Pulled his collar back.
He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired, before he composes himself and walks out of the building. But the footage wasn't quite finished yet.
And then, like, roll... Okay, before we get that, roll me back again, because like I said, he was fiddling with his hands.
It had just transpired. Stops once again, where he seems to be in a
Okay, so gotta go back.
with the door handle.
Come on, hurry up. There. Okay, we can slow this down even. I don't know if it's gonna sound weird because I don't know how much he was talking during this. Like his hands are like curled up in a weird way. Like they're, I can't really say, but he's like, it's like he's trying to zip his coat up, but he's not actually doing that. And then I guess this is him taking his sleeve.
Turning
His sleeve and wiping the door.
around and walking back. He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired,
Assumption.
before he composes himself and walks out of the building. But the footage wasn't quite finished yet.
8 minutes after entry. Only 8 minutes. Still alive.
Just 1 minute later, you can hear Johnny shouting for help from inside the apartment, to which moments after, he stops, and no further sound or activity would come from Johnny's unit until police arrived 5 days later. The footage and the scene at the apartment seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death. The blood all over made it obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown man who was clearly distraught and wiping off his fingerprints, as well as the sound of the apparent struggle inside, seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family.
I'm just trying to like make up weird thoughts about this. Like, okay, let's look at these two again. Roll me back.
Obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown
You see this
man
guy?
who was clearly distraught,
Like a light skin,
wiping off his
got
fingerprints,
like short hair, kind of like
as well as
curly
the
in the
sound
back,
of the
maybe.
apparent
Okay, I guess it has to be two different people. I was like, maybe like someone was in there, he killed them, and now he's leaving. Like Johnny was the one who actually left. But like the hair here is like too like long compared to the other guy. I don't know. Unless he like cleaned up his hair during that. I don't know.
struggle inside seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family. But even with this footage, police still believed that Johnny's death was due to a medical emergency, as
What?
they quickly changed their initial story, saying that the blood spread was due to uncontrollable vomiting, and that Johnny had in fact likely suffered, at least for a short while.
Okay.
But this medical emergency wasn't elaborated on, as they
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
didn't truly know what caused it, as no autopsy was ever performed.
Yeah, and then you got rid of the evidence, so
Nor could one ever be performed, as by this point, Johnny was already cremated, and cremated because of the officer's initial statements. So if Johnny had actually been murdered, which the footage does seem to suggest, there was now virtually no way to prove it. And what makes this even more frustrating is that law enforcement already had this footage. It was collected that very day, and they either didn't fully look through it or didn't.
okay, so was wondering that, and we just did learn that that guy's door is adjacent to this guy's. I was like, how does that work? But Johnny's door opens up, and this guy's door opens in, but that does kind of get in the way. But
think that
at
this
least
was
they don't
overly suspicious.
interact with each other.
But everyone else surely did. And soon, this video began making the rounds online,
Probably because the guy who did it is a cop.
leading to one glaring question being asked. Who is
Oh.
this man?
That's like a clear shot. I mean, using a lot of filters to try to get this kind of clear shot, but still.
As no one in Johnny's life recognized him. Well, it wouldn't be until May 11th that investigators would finally ID him
Is that a mustache? It
as
is.
Stephen Church. And upon being questioned, he revealed that he had moved to Lynchburg for work, but the opportunity he had lined up fell through shortly after he arrived, leaving him with no money and without a place to stay, which is when he met Johnny, who offered to let him crash on his couch. He supposedly stayed with Johnny for 3 days, and described Johnny as an alcoholic who drank constantly, including on that fateful day.
Sure.
When Johnny arrived home, Stephen claims that he started drunkenly yelling at him about paying rent, which led to the two getting into a verbal altercation.
Drunkenly yelling, but not loud enough to be heard on this guy's camera.
But he insisted that this altercation never turned physical, and that he left immediately after, to which he quickly went back to clean his prints because he was afraid that Johnny would try and have him arrested for squatting. And having already racked up 2 felonies in his life, Stephen was paranoid about going back to jail.
The 3 strikes you're out rule, right? Really? How do you got 2 felonies already? I mean, you have 2 felonies? You think we're gonna believe you after that?
No. But when Stephen was leaving, he did mention seeing Johnny hunched over the toilet as if he were going to vomit, but he claims to have left before this so-called medical emergency started. This is the gist of Stephen's account from that day.
It didn't feel like there was an altercation. There was like a lot of scuffling and whatnot. But it didn't sound like a big brawl or anything.
But the problem is, it doesn't really match up with what we're hearing in the video.
What you doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that.
Yo, what the fuck, dude?
From the footage, we can hear everything going on in that unit, but at no point do we hear any sort of an argument,
Yeah.
nor do we hear anything about rent, with the phrases lending themselves more to a physical struggle rather than a verbal one. In fact, the whole time it appears that we're only hearing one voice. But there is an exception.
Oh. I can't stop. I don't. That could be a reach, but sure.
To my knowledge, it's never been conclusively determined whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room. But regardless, this audio makes it clear that Steven's story was fabricated at least to some degree, as he also fails to account for the loud banging in the background. And because of this, his version of events is generally rejected, with most people seeming to believe one of two main theories.
Johnny dies as a result of a fight with Steven, yeah. Internal, like his internal organs got ruptured in the fight.
The first is that, upon arriving home, Johnny and Steven had gotten into a physical altercation, resulting in Johnny taking some sort of blow to his abdomen, which in turn triggered or exacerbated this medical emergency.
Yep.
GI bleeds are horrific, and can certainly cause the level of bleeding that was found in the apartment, and perhaps seeing all the blood coming from Johnny, Steven started yelling at him, before deciding to run off, fearing that he would be charged for murder. This would explain Steven's demeanor and actions after leaving the apartment, and why he may have fabricated his story, as he knew or knows that he was directly responsible for Johnny's death. And this blow to the abdomen could have easily been missed by investigators, as the injuries would have been primarily internal. The second
somehow wasn't strong enough to actually leave a bruise on the outside, but it still ruptured his internal organs. From a natural occurring assault, just theory 2 is he just actually died.
theory is that upon arriving home, Johnny naturally experienced a medical emergency leading to this catastrophic GI bleed. Upon seeing this and perhaps being in a state of shock, Steven yelled at him, demanding to know what was happening and telling him to stop, as perhaps he was moving around the apartment and tracking blood everywhere, which would explain the other voice saying, "I can't stop." I could see how this experience would make no sense to Steven, and perhaps just having no idea what was happening, he left and tried to make it look like he was never there, as he was afraid of being blamed for whatever was happening to Johnny.
I'm kind of okay with either one.
And so he essentially left Johnny there to die.
It's not like it was like a hit or anything. It's just like, oh, we scrapped. I hit him in the stomach. He started bleeding everywhere, and I was like, okay, wait, I'm out. Sure. Or just something happened to actually cause the GI, like they said, and he started bleeding, and he's telling them to stop. But I mean, I can't stop bleeding. What do you mean? Both of those are plausible to me. I have no issue with either of those.
Whether knowingly or unknowingly. What bothers me about this theory is why 911 was never called, not only by Steven, but by Johnny too, as his phone was found in the unit with blood on it, implying that he had it in his hand at some point, though it's possible that the massive blood loss just made him too disoriented.
Yeah.
Both of these theories seem believable, or at least more so than the explanation that Steven had given. However, in October of 2022,
Commonwealth's attorney announces no charges in death of John Cashman.
Johnny's case would officially be closed for good, with Steven being cleared of any wrongdoing, as Johnny's death was labeled the same way that it always has been, a medical emergency that couldn't be further elaborated on, with the most relevant evidence being that Steven's shoe prints were not found in the blood, but
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, that's why that was the first thing I checked, was to see if, his shoes had any blood on it, because if they had blood, it means he was near whatever the altercation was, but like there wasn't a single drop on the floor or anything as he walked away. So it was almost like, so if we're going with the second theory, like the guy did just start bleeding everywhere, and he immediately got away from him. Out of, like, 'cause he was obviously freaking out. He didn't want anything to do with that, so he was like running away, which means what would make sense if he was like physically away from the guy, there would be no blood on his clothing, or on his clothes, on his shoes, because like he's not covered in blood. His hands, I mean, he had them curled up. They seem to be clean. His shoes, again, and his shoes have no blood, so he was nowhere near. He didn't have to move away from the blood, because he was probably already away from it when it started happening.
Johnny's were, implying that he had not been part of the struggle. But in my mind, this can be explained by both theories mentioned previously. Though regardless, without the possibility of an autopsy, this is likely where this case ends for good.
I'm guessing if he punched him, and then it ruptured, but then like he didn't start immediately bleeding everywhere, and like that punch was like the end of the fight, right? And then he went to go bleed out, and then the guy left.
But with this disturbing footage, I can't help but think that there was more to the story than we may ever know.
I mean, yeah, because the cops are stupid. It's the cops' fault. Like telling them everything was fine. This is just normal. Like I don't know why they had to lie so much to like and then cause this issue. Because now we're screwed on that story forever. TikTokers find a body. Okay, is this the let me see if I can remember it. I'll cut and then come back when I remember. I can't remember. I gave it a minute. It's the thing where you give the app your intent and it sends you to a place of wherever your intent was. Like I know there's like a famous story of like them doing this, using the app to go to death, and then they find a body inside of a suitcase on the shore. So I don't know what it's called though. I forgot. Even though I've seen it several times, or I've heard people talk about it several times, like in videos. I don't know if this is gonna be that because it's a TikToker specifically.
It was around 7:30 a.m. on a warm July morning back in 2019.
2019 is a long time ago. This might have been when they were doing that kind of stuff.
17-year-olds Bethany Martin and a 16-year-old friend decide to walk to a gas station near their home in San Antonio, Texas.
What is going on? Like, this first one, again, South Park Mall. We have a South Park Mall here. There was another thing that I talked about that happened in, I thought it happened in Texas, the Arlington explosion, but that was Arlington, Virginia, not Arlington, Texas, I think. But there was another thing that was Texas related here, right? And then I talked about recently that Jonathan, I forget his last name, but the guy who plays John Redcorn, right? In not Hank, in King of the Hill, was murdered recently in a hate crime. And that was in San Antonio, Texas, again, which is where I live. Which that was like in relation to talking about some other story that happened in Texas in one of these videos. And now here we are again talking about San Antonio, Texas, again, which is where I live. I was just mentioning that earlier. I was like, wait, another story in Texas? But no, we are literally in San Antonio. Like, what is going on?
And as the two of them made their way down the road, their path brought them parallel to a drainage ditch, which was often filled with various trash and other discarded material.
2019. I don't know if I would know about this story. That was a long time ago. That was during, like, almost COVID, but not quite, right? COVID was 2020, right?
But on this day, something far more interesting caught their eye. It looked like a man crouching down and leaned up against one of the concrete walls. But the closer they got, the more they realized how unusual his posture was. He looked completely unnatural.
Just blurry. I have no clue where this is because it's just pure pixelation.
And he wasn't moving. And by the time they came face to face with him, the reality of the situation would hit them. They had just found a dead body.
It's been a while since I've been outside.
This discovery was enough to traumatize anyone, especially two teenagers. And upon calling the police and being sent on their way, Bethany and her friend would make the long walk back home, contemplating what to do next, before they eventually landed on the idea of sharing their experience with the world. And so, as soon as they got in the door, they began to set up lights in their camera in order to film a TikTok.
I was remembering we found a dead body this morning. Okay.
The clip showed the two sitting on a couch appearing to be in a state of shock, with the words, "Us remembering we found a dead body this morning," plastered on the screen, offering no other context aside from the description, which simply read, "I wish we were kidding, all respect to the family."
Yeah, you could have at least called
Some
it in.
offered sympathy for the girls, while others viewed their post as insensitive and
Of course, I mean, you shouldn't be making a TikTok on this, and you should have called it in. I mean, anything for views, though, nowadays, right? At least you didn't actually film the body.
exploitative. But others weren't even convinced it was real, partially due to this glaring lack of context. But any doubt of this post's legitimacy would be quickly thwarted by a discovery made not even one full day later, as it was revealed that this recording hadn't actually been the only video that these two girls had made on that fateful day.
Oof, never mind. This is not a very long thing.
On their walk to the gas station, the girls had stumbled across the body of 25-year-old Marcus Adams, with the young man having seemingly perished earlier that morning, with it being apparent that he had taken his own life. But upon finding Marcus, the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock,
Modern humanity.
as instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention. His necklace.
Still did not just
The
snatch
girls
that.
really liked it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly.
Roll me back. Too blurry. I don't know which one it was, the one that had or not, 'cause they're wearing something, but who knows if it's theirs.
On finding Marcus,
Their video's too blurry. Yeah, we're not gonna know. I'm assuming they're wearing it right now. One of these two is wearing it. This doesn't look exactly like that, but this one might be. Is theft of a corpse like a higher crime, or is it just considered regular theft? Is it even considered theft if it's from a corpse? Like, what are the ruling on that?
the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock, as
It could be desecration of the dead, right?
instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention. His necklace. The girls really liked it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly. And so, before police arrived, the two would once again pull out their phone and start recording, showing Bethany approaching the body with her intention being to grab his necklace.
Yeah, this is Bethany.
Which she eventually does, removing the medallion and giving it to her friend, before tossing the chain into the grass nearby, leading to the girls running away from the scene.
Okay, so she took the medallion, but didn't want the chain to go with it.
The 16-year-old would then post that video onto her Snapchat story, for all of her close friends to see.
Which you're not allowed to, like, record that in any way, right? Is that why she put it on Snapchat, assuming they wouldn't be able to get the footage off of there?
I can't show the footage for obvious reasons, but it's truly awful. And just based on the audio alone, you can tell that they're very obviously having fun doing this.
You gotta do it now.
And I can't.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god.
There's something so uniquely disturbing about it. It's clear that upon finding the body, there was no real emotional impact on them, at least none that outweighed their desire to steal from it. And as if stealing from this man who had just taken his own life, and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke, wasn't horrible enough, they then immediately posted this other video to TikTok in an attempt to garner sympathy.
Yeah.
It's truly awful, and made even more appalling by reports that claim that the 16-year-old had actually worn this medallion in the TikTok video, and in others made following its posting.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because of this cruddy camera quality here.
And unfortunately, their actions had even more upsetting consequences, as the footage from their Snapchat story was quickly downloaded by someone they knew and posted onto an app called Nextdoor.
Join the neighborhood to see what's going on. Okay, so they actually were able to download the video from Snapchat, although Snapchat's not supposed to let you do stuff like that. Which, disclaimer, I don't have Snapchat, I've never used it, I don't have an account, so I don't actually know how it works. I'm just
The footage being
making that assumption.
totally uncensored. And it was on this app where it's claimed that many of Marcus Adams' own family members would see the footage, many of whom weren't even aware that he was deceased.
I mean, at least they know, but like in such a cruddy way is like, oof. And yeah, I didn't hear about this because I mean, obviously I'm not really paying attention to local news that much. So I kind of am. I mean, if it shows up on like while I'm scrolling on the phone in the news section, then maybe. But
Just one day after posting this TikTok, both girls were questioned by the police after the incident and the footage was reported to them. And as a result, Bethany would be charged with theft of a human corpse.
it is a named crime. Okay, we just learned something today. Because I didn't know if the like theft of a corpse is a thing or if it would be considered desecration of a body, but no, it is literally theft of a corpse.
But would
Theft of something on a corpse.
ultimately avoid any serious jail time.
I'm guessing this is because she's a minor.
Meanwhile, the 16-year-old's name and charges were never publicly released, but we do know that the medallion was returned to the family. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bethany would later come back to her TikTok page shortly after her arrest and share her side of the story, where she gave a less than half-hearted apology, while also claiming to be the victim, saying that her friend had pressured her to steal from Marcus, as well as pressured her into making that TikTok in the
We're doing this, like the friends commit a crime together and one has to throw them under the bus. Will they both throw each other under the bus? She's saying that she had to take the hit for her friend, but then you could argue that she's also throwing her friend under the bus right now too. That's assuming that the other one throwing her under the bus isn't true. So yeah, just multiple or simultaneous bus throwing.
first place, because she thought it would be a hit, though obviously this didn't go over well.
I guess they're probably not friends anymore after that. So yeah, again, what is going on? Why is San Antonio / Texas showing up in these videos so often? Like, what? Yeah, again, I couldn't tell you where this was. I don't know. Since the video was just all pixelated, and I don't know if I've been to this area before to begin with. If I had like a wider view of the whole area, I would know where it was, but oof. And just humanity, like these children, they're getting worse and worse. Janelle Matthews. This is the last one.
On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her home in Greeley, Colorado in the evening hours. Earlier that day, she had sung at a Christmas concert with her school's choir, which her parents were unable to attend, as her mother was out of town and her father had gone to her sister's basketball game nearby, leading to Janelle catching a ride home with a friend, being dropped off at her house sometime around 8:15, where she excitedly spoke to her father on the phone, letting him know that she had arrived home safe and sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway to find the garage door wide open, and the house completely empty.
Yeah, someone break in, or what? Garage door open, which gives access to the house. Get in there, snatch her, and then run away.
Janelle was gone, leaving behind her winter coat and even her shoes, despite it being a frigid, snowy night. And it was within that snow that was quickly piling up that lie one of the only real clues left behind at the scene. Footprints, leading directly to one of the home's windows, insinuating that someone had been watching Janelle.
12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her Greeley home 1 month ago today. It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping. She has not been seen or heard from since December 20th.
Her disappearance became a big news story almost immediately, with the whole community and really the whole country becoming invested in the fate of this girl.
Really? I mean, depending on when this was, I probably wasn't alive yet, so I didn't remember when they said this happened.
Thanks in large part to her being one of the very first milk carton kids, meaning that her face and information
80s, so date missing is 79, Janelle 84, because yeah, I wasn't alive yet.
Information about her disappearance was shown on countless milk cartons all across the country to get the word out. And as a result, this case became huge in the mainstream media, as even politicians began to make note of Janelle's story, with then-President Ronald Reagan mentioning the girl in one of his speeches.
I learned about Janelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, 5 days before Christmas. Janelle disappeared from her home.
Though even with this publicity, this didn't necessarily guarantee results, and soon months would turn to years, and eventually to decades. And all the while, Janelle's whereabouts remained a complete mystery.
So I'm guessing that's not going to be the case now, because you said decades. Well, decades have passed now, so what happened?
Eventually, the rise of the internet would start to play a key role in this case, where even in the late 2010s, over 3 decades after she had vanished, her case was still being shared and still being discussed, just as it had been 3 decades prior, with it still being a point of contention for politicians, even as recently as 2019. When a man running for governor of Idaho mentioned her disappearance in a Facebook post, 35 full years later.
There's no such thing as closure. My 20-year-old son, Carl, was murdered on, how do we want to say this, 7/4/2008? So July 4th? 'Cause, I mean, we have, like, It depends on where it is, right? Where the date's first or the month's first, but I think this is a month and day. So yeah. July 4th, 2008. Losing a child hurts your entire life. I'm fortunate to have truthful facts regarding Carl's murder. The United States Attorney for the District of Colorado needs to actively oversee the investigation into the death and disappearance of Miss Janelle Matthews, a human being. Since 1984, police have only considered sinister, emotionally charged child abduction possibilities, and they are culpable with resulting vigilantism. The public deserves the uncensored truth, even if it hurts the reputation of the local law enforcement. Pray for truth, not revenge.
Regardless of Janelle's whereabouts, her case was still very much alive, as the world, and especially Janelle's parents, were haunted by the question, what happened to Janelle Matthews? But sure enough, in late 2019, they would finally get their answer.
Yeah, well, another thing taking place in 2019.
Bones found in Weld County earlier this week appeared to bring an end to a 3-decade-long search for a missing 12-year-old girl. The Greeley Tribune is reporting they are those of Janelle Matthews.
On Tuesday, July 23, 2019, at roughly 4:50 p.m., a crew had been digging in an isolated field in Weld County, Colorado, in order to install a new pipeline, when they would uncover the decayed remains of a little girl. It was Janelle, still wearing those clothes that she had worn to her recital, meaning she had likely died the very day she disappeared, having been killed by a single gunshot wound to the head.
Why, though? Now we need
Janelle Matthews had been murdered in cold blood.
No, why?
And almost immediately upon finding her body, the police would also zero in on their suspect.
How?
The man's name was Stephen Pankey.
How did they do that so quickly? That seems suspicious. Like, oh, they finally find her body 30 years later, and they know exactly who to look for.
And at the time of Janelle's disappearance, he had been living in the same general area in Colorado. But by 2019, Stephen had long since fled the area, as after the crime, he would eventually pack up seemingly out of the blue and move to Idaho, where when Janelle's body was discovered, he just so happened to be running for governor.
I was like, wondering why we have so much footage of him. It seemed like he was doing some sort of political stuff. Rolling back? What, for motive? Possibly?
And during his campaign, Pankey had put out a bizarre face.
Oh, this was Pankey. Did he kill his son, too? Why would you do this? Why would you be so risky?
Facebook post about Janelle.
As like talk about someone you killed. Again, it's like the murderers always want to return to the scene of the crime. They can't help themselves but bask in it.
Calling for the Colorado DA to oversee a fresh investigation.
He also says don't look for revenge, just look for the truth.
He stated that the local police had wrongly been focused on the theory that Janelle's disappearance was a child abduction and murder, which was quite convenient, as just a few months after posting this, he would be arrested for the abduction and murder of Janelle Matthews. Police believe that Janelle had first caught Stephen's eye when he was working as a janitor at the church she attended, with this leading to him stalking her and eventually abducting her on that fateful night.
I mean, going from janitor to governor, he was trying to do something, but too bad.
Where he threw Janelle in his car and ultimately ended her life, for no reason other than his sick satisfaction.
Yeah, I was like, why would you do this?
He then proceeded to bury her in a field 20 miles away, in a spot that he was certain no one would ever find her. Now, the evidence supporting this is mainly circumstantial, but it is incredibly concerning. Just one day after Janelle's abduction, Pankey decided to take his wife to California in order to celebrate the holidays with his parents, with this trip being completely unplanned, as his wife was only told of it literally the day of. And making things stranger, when they returned home, Stephen's car conveniently caught fire and was burned to a crisp, to which he offered no explanation for. But in response, he would take the car to a local scrapyard where it would be even further destroyed, taking any potential evidence along with it.
Is burning a car and then squashing it enough to hide all evidence of... I'm assuming that it would be her blood, right? If there's any blood there. Or any evidence of her tipping with like hairs, skin, etc.
But while this is all strange enough, police say that the main indicator that Stephen was their man was his clear obsession with Janelle's case. Shortly after the slaying, Stephen began listening and watching any news reports he could on Janelle's case, while also having his wife read every single article about the missing girl out loud, to which he would often have her repeat them over and over again. But his obsession didn't stop there, as he would then start frequently calling the police, wanting to talk to them about the case, even going as far as to give them potential leads, as he claimed to be fearful that he was going to be blamed for the crime, despite having seemingly never even met her. And it was during some of these many unusual phone calls that he was said to have given details on her disappearance that were never actually made public.
Okay, well, I guess they were just staring at him for a while now because of that. Again, like, what, self-sabotaging, which good that he did do that, but, like, I feel like saying to the cops that you think that you're going to be blamed for something is kind of just, like, pointing the finger at you to begin with.
His obsession was entirely uncanny, bringing up her disappearance at random even decades later, with his Facebook post being a perfect example. And as it turns out, one of Stephen's most incriminating statements came as a result of something he mentioned in that infamous message.
He's too obsessed with her. It's like, it's haunting him. You could argue what he's done. Or maybe he's just getting off on it, but like maybe he's actually being haunted and he just can't. He's trying to get caught at this point. Granted, he's gotten away with it for 30 years. Let me roll back for a second. He's been doing this for like 30 years. He's gotten away with it for 30 years, so it's like, how old is he now? I mean, I guess it depends on how old he was then. 20, 30. He's running for governor, so maybe he's actually decrepit at this point. Since that's what like most politicians are, right? They're just like dust. Oh, what happened there?
Statements came as a result of something he mentioned in that infamous message. In it, Stephen says that his son Carl had been murdered in 2008.
Yeah.
Which is in fact true, as the murder was actually fully solved, with it being confirmed that Stephen had nothing to do with it. But when he was mourning the loss of Carl, something unusual happened. His now ex-wife recalled that following Carl's death, Pinky never once cried, until the day before his memorial service, where she watched him from a distance walk up to their son's urn and begin to sob, eventually blurting out, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Janelle Matthews." Despite maintaining his innocence to this day, Pinky was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2040.
2040? I mean, you think this old guy's gonna make another, what, 20 years? I don't think so. Well, I can't tell how old he is. Is he 60, 70, 80? Like another 20, I don't think he got it in him, so that's life.
Conviction coming 12,634 days after Janelle Matthews' disappearance, with Pinky's cryptic Facebook post serving as a dark relic of his twisted obsession that would eventually expose him as Janelle's killer.
The thought did cross my mind of his son dying from punishment of him killing Janelle. So that's obviously not okay. Like, to take his son away because he took someone else's child away from them. The child didn't do any, like, his child didn't do anything wrong. So to assume that is messed up. But it did cross my mind that if you want some sort of karma, that could have been karma. But at the cost of an innocent child, which is obviously not okay. Which, let's hope that karma doesn't actually work that way. Yeah, we have the end. Alright, so yeah, what do we have this time around? We have the unfortunate two guys getting trapped in South Park Mall, or near South Park Mall, and unfortunately dying. We had this weird situation where this guy died and we don't know how he died, and the police just like fumbled that one horribly. And this one that happened in San Antonio, I don't understand why we keep getting so many Texas things, so many things that like remind me of San Antonio, or just outright happen in San Antonio. Like, hello? Why is all this stuff happening where I live? Can we not do that? And of course, this one, where this guy was just like, he's literally just haunted by what he's done his entire life. And he finally got what was coming to him. So, at least he finally went to jail. But hey guys, thanks for watching. Remember to buy my stickers, or think about becoming a member, or subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So we can watch time and subscribers. And don't forget we have a throw now as well. And shout out to the members, EmmyStarr and RaleyDrew. Big guys, thanks for watching. Tune into the next episode. Like, subscribe, comment. You know what to do. See ya.